I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, a lot of family issues and a lot of trauma. And so I realized the one thing I could control in my life was my weight and my body. And so in doing that, I became anorexic.
I didn't go down the route of like anorexia is going to be my thing, although I totally could see. I sort of fantasized about it at different times. Like I'd sort of fantasized about what self-destructive things can I do? Welcome, my friends, to a Thoughts and Feelings dialogue. My name is Brentan, and today I'm joined by Grace. Grace and I have never met each other. We both separately had a dialogue with Evan, and today we are here to explore the topic of body image. So, welcome, Grace.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Yes, me too. So to give us a place to dive into, and you are more than welcome, by the way, to take this in any direction that you think is exciting to go in. But I would be interested in just kind of orienting myself around the topic with you and learning a little bit about how it was for you growing up. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you learn about your body, how you should think about your body, how you should treat your body, either because people were outrightly saying things or behaving in ways toward you, or it was just subliminal messaging that you sort of picked up on and decided, this is what it means to be a person, and this is how I should.
So interesting. I'm so excited.
Yay. Okay. Tell me about it.
Well, I grew up, I'm going to start first on like how as a child I was supposed to view like my body and myself. I grew up in Houston and for first like 10 years of my life. And I no longer go to churches like this, but I went to a Baptist church and I grew up around a lot of really conservative Christians. And for women with their bodies, a lot of it was taught that you need to be modest. Your body is a temple, which you hear a lot, but you really need to be modest and like covered up, and you need to be conscious. And that was taught to me from a young age about modesty and stuff like that, which it doesn't seem like it's detrimental, but it kind of does later on, because the older you get and you have more attention from people about your body for different ways, then you start thinking the inappropriate things that other people say about you are somehow your fault for not fitting into this like conservative, modest norm, or at least that was something that I struggled with a little bit. And then as I grew up, I started forming my own opinions and own thoughts, but that was interesting. That was really hard to overcome and realize, no, I can respect my body the way that I want to, and other people will say what they want about it, but that's really not my fault. And for example, when I was younger, I thought that getting a tattoo was like awful, deep Bible Belt South in Houston. I thought that was like, devil, whatever. Now I have one, and so I've grown with that kind of thought. And then just the body image on like how you're supposed to look. I, growing up, didn't really think a ton about my body image and my weight. I've always been like a petite person, smallest one in the class and stuff. And then my thoughts about my body and how it should look like thin-wise when you think body image normally started to change when I got older, because I had a lot of stuff going on in my life, a lot of family issues and a lot of trauma. And so I realized the one thing I could control in my life was my weight and my body. And so in doing that, I became anorexic, and I dealt with that for a while, and I ended up going to residential for about a month, and then another 5 months of PHP and IOP, which is partial hospitalization, and intensive outpatient to really work on my eating and understand that controlling weight doesn't necessarily mean controlling my life, even though that's what I was grasping on. So I never was anorexic because I wanted to look like, Bella Hadid or something. It was always because my body image and how my body looked was the one thing I could control during that time.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
I think there's some good stuff to pick out for the next
lifetime.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes, the things that struck me the most was like this concept of modesty, certainly, and growing up there, and then also the anorexia and the control, because that's what I've not struggled with an eating disorder myself, but I would suspect that anorexia would have that feeling of like, I don't know how to control all these different aspects of my life, but this thing I can see very clearly that if I do X, Y happens, and I would like to be in control of the process of having like reliable results from something in my life.
Something funny with that is when you go to treatment, you meet a bunch of different people with a bunch of different eating disorders. And this is not a blanket statement, but the majority of what I saw, the anorexic people were all super high achieving, high stress perfectionists. And the people that struggled more with like binge eating disorder or binge purge or, orthorexia and other stuff, they weren't as like they were more people with like bipolar who couldn't control their emotions, so instead they like used food to supplement emotions. But all the anorexic people that I was in treatment with, they were all very straight and narrow, very control freaks, and like me, and it was really interesting to see. So that's definitely true. I don't know if there's probably studies on it, but just from my own experience, I found that.
That is quite interesting.
Yeah.
It does strike me as something that makes sense, although I have not given it much thought up until this moment in time.
Most people don't. And I mean, everyone's different. And also one thing I do want to say about people with anorexia, you don't have to be skinny to be anorexic. Like the skinny, like that's one thing when I've done a couple speeches about my eating disorder, and something major is that you can be anorexic and not look anorexic at all. It's not like atypical anorexia, which is the person you see in the movies. So I just wanted to make sure if anyone's listening and struggling, you don't have to look a certain way or be a certain weight. If you have a problem with restricting food, you are worthy of getting help. So I wanted to use my soapbox while I have it.
For sure. May I ask, how have you sort of closed the loop on the eating disorder? What are sort of like the major things that you've learned from it that have been really helpful to you?
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect. I think I'm always going to struggle with my eating disorder. It's never just going to go away. But at the beginning, when I didn't want to get better, my thought was, I don't want to get better, but what's the worst that can happen? I get fat and there's nothing wrong with that. So, you might as well just try to start eating so you can stay alive and get better and start functioning. Because when you're in a place of restricting, like, I was working like 3 jobs and not eating anything and running and all this stuff. And it was just like running on, my tank was empty. So at first it was just trying to survive and find more joy in life. And then I realized how much I was missing out on because of my anorexia. Like I wasn't going to social situations because I was worried people would be like, hey, come over to our house for pizza and a movie. And I'm like, no, I'm going to have to not like, I'm not going to want to eat the pizza and then it's going to be awkward. I might as well just not go. And then I realized how much my eating disorder was stealing from my life. And I spent 6 months of my junior year in high school in treatment and 1 month away. And I just realized, there's no benefits. I might get temporary control, but that's not the control I really want. And so once I started doing more, I talked on my last dialogue about therapy. And once I started doing more therapy and realizing my root issues, I was able to let go of that and eat more. And so now what really helps me is I try to keep a routine of eating my 3 meals a day and a snack, whether I want to or not. And it's not perfect. Like a couple weeks ago, it wasn't going well, but it's always, I lost too much valuable time of my life to let my eating disorder overtake my life again.
Mm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like at some point you realized, I can't sustain this.
Mm-mm.
And that is hugely motivating, of course, because you're like, the moment you realize something can't be sustained is the moment where you're like, okay, well, something's going to need to change at some point. So I may as well start thinking about that now.
Yeah. Well, one thing that, a lot of people that go into treatment, their parents force them to, or a doctor or something. I had a therapist suggest it and I didn't want to go. And then I thought about it and I was like, it's already pretty bad. I might as well. So I signed myself up, convinced my mom to sign it with insurance and all that fun stuff. And when I was there, I saw people that are like 40 years old on their 7th round of treatment. And that was just so sad to me. And I'm like, how much time are you losing of life? Like, in and out of treatment and being obsessed with food and calories and all that stuff. And so that really motivated me to try to get better because I went when I was 16, I believe. Yeah, 16. And so that really motivated me because I saw older people that have been doing this for 10 years. And I thought, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah. It's I think about it as like nice to have those role models sometimes of like the thing I don't want to end up being. That has also been very motivating to me, certainly in my life, is I don't know. So my story kind of is a little bit different than yours because I didn't grow up in like a church. There wasn't any sort of messaging early on in my childhood that you should be modest, you should be ashamed, or you should be any certain way. It was more accepting than that. And I don't really recall thinking much about my body at all until I started having like crushes. And all like the first crush that I have, all of a sudden, I was like 8. It was like, oh, wow. And now I want to be seen a certain way by the person who I admire. And so now it's like this weird self-conscious thing of like, what? I've never had to think about myself like this. And then right around that time as well, my mom ended up we just call it getting sick because we don't know exactly what had happened, but she had some autoimmune like problems.
Okay.
And they manifested in a lot of different ways. She found out about it because her vision disappeared, so she went blind.
Wow.
And then, I mean, we were so young that I don't think she was really sharing a lot with us, but she kind of became bedridden from then on. And it was very strange. And she was in a lot of pain and her organs weren't working well and she didn't have any energy and she had surgeries a lot. Like she would just have like bone that would just grow in a muscle someplace that would get cut out. So it was just very, very strange. And I mean, if I were in that situation, I don't think that I could have done much better. But the kind of the moment that she got sick, it felt like, okay, your body could betray you at any moment.
Yeah.
Like your body cannot be trusted. Your body is bad. Your body will disappoint you. And nobody said that out loud, but it was a feeling around the house that I picked up on. And so there's kind of just like this sadness, like just kind of waiting for like, well, when's that going to happen to me as like an 8-year-old, right? And there was no communication around what can we do to make today good or fun, like I think she just kind of gave up. She never really exercised after that. She wasn't really paying attention to her diet after that. She kind of gave up even raising her kids after that a little bit because she was just in bed. So I was sort of just like this lone ranger with my little sister, figuring out how to feed myself from canned tamales that were in the pantry.
Those don't sound good.
They were not. And that was what I learned from my family. But then simultaneously in the culture, like, and you got this too. I don't know any woman who has not gotten this. When we were growing up and you see images of women, it's very standardized image.
Yeah, it's like cut and paste. It's better now in 2020.
Totally.
Like I wish that when I was, 8, I don't know how old you are, but when I'm 19 now, I wish, 10 years ago, we had the same sort of body diversity that we do now. It's not perfect, but there's more people that look completely different. And you're like, I have to look like Hannah Montana when I grow up or something. I don't know. I didn't watch Disney. My parents didn't let me watch that much TV.
Oh, interesting. I watched so much TV because my mom was in bed, and so I was just watching the TV channel. So I got like the Lizzie McGuire or like Friends, everybody on Friends, and like Monica is the super skinny one on Friends, and she has this backstory about being super obese, and it's like, that's not how that works.
No.
So it's like the stories that they give you about your body. And I agree with you 100%. And I also think now you can control it a little bit more because on social media, you choose which accounts to follow. Mm-hmm. And so I follow I make it a practice to follow a very wide, diverse, and see things that are different than what the images that I grew up with. Because I grew up with just that standardized image. And then I'm on the couch, not exercising or not really eating well or not really thinking well about myself or my body. And I'm learning how to be a person from somebody who's in bed, who doesn't have a good relationship with herself or any other person for that matter. And so it was it got me to a situation in my teen, because I'm 32.
Okay.
So it got me into a situation in my teenage years where I was just not I didn't go down the route of like anorexia is going to be my thing. Although I totally could see, I sort of fantasized about it at different times. Like I'd sort of fantasized about what self-destructive things can I do?
I got a list for you.
Oh, that's so funny. I had a list in my notebook about these things. Did you have the same thing?
No, I kind of just did them.
Yeah.
My list is added up. Like, go to AA by 15 years old, check. Anorexia, check. Mental health, check. What else do you want to do?
Right.
But I don't know if you watched the whole of my thoughts and feelings one, but I was very successful. I was making a lot of money. I had a 4.25 GPA while I was in treatment. Like, it just, you never know. I have an interesting question that what do you think was, for health, when did you decide that your body, I don't know if you have decided, like, where do you draw the line of what's healthy and what's not? So I'll give an example. For me, I have, I think exercise and eating well is important. However, with my anorexia, I can't do something too much because it'll just spiral me, and then all of a sudden I'll become obsessed with exercising every day and obsessed with like a certain diet. So for me, I tried to skew it to where I started a dance class to exercise for my mental health, and yoga. And that's what I can do to stay healthy for my mental health and keep my body moving. And then I just started to try to eat more plant based and eat more vegetables, but I also I'll still eat meat, for special occasions, because if I start making rules, then I start becoming very sick again. So, what about you? Did you ever come to a point like where you thought, okay, it's time to be healthy and here's how I'm going to do it?
Yeah, I actually kind of obsessed over it. Well, and I feel similar to you too, where it sounds like what you're expressing is like, I have to be careful with my addictive tendencies, because not only can that take me down the downward spiral, but it can also take me down this this upward spiral. So I need to make sure that I have good boundaries around what I'm doing. Yes. So, and I feel very similarly to you in that regard as well. Like, I smoked half a pack of cigarettes a day for 10 years, and I quit cigarettes 3 or 4 times, and so I've been through these cycles of getting sick and tired of something in here, still doing it here for a while. And while I'm doing it here, going through these cycles, and this creates so much dissonance that after like a month or 2 months, you just kind of get fed up and you're like, okay, I have to change my behavior. That, at least for me, was how many of my quitting cycles with cigarettes were. So yes, I did get to a point where I actually think that growing up with a sick mom was a really good thing for me, because I got to see what I didn't want to be like. And so I knew, like, no matter how effed up life gets, and it will get effed up, and I expect it to get effed up, but no matter how effed up it gets, I have a model of how I don't want to see things, because I know that the way she was looking at herself and the world and her place in it, no doubt she had a lot of true challenges, but the perspective that you take on is a choice. So I had that, and I was like, okay, I know that I want a super awesome life. Like, I always knew that. And I think that is what ultimately gets me out of these things eventually. Like, did I quit cigarettes 3 times and then continue to smoke? And then I finally got to the place where I was like, no, for real, I'm done. And I think that for real moment is because I just refuse to live a life that feels mediocre, or feels like, not mediocre maybe, but feels like I'm not engaging with my potential. I'm not trying to become the best that I can be. So I think that kind of powers the whole thing for me.
I totally relate to that. For me, I kind of have a little chip on my shoulder, which is not the most. Therapists have said it's not healthy, but I have accomplished some things because of it. And I just think, you've been given this hand that kind of sucks. You have these obstacles, but guess what? Instead of crumbling and becoming a statistic like everyone would think, that's really sad that Grace ended up being like that. But, it was really just a matter of time. In my head, I'm like, instead of doing that, I'm going to become so successful that
totally.
People are going to be like, wow, okay, she's not a statistic, which is it's not super healthy. I know that. But I get worried that I'm not going to live up to my potential or this gift of life that I've been given. Like, what if I waste it,
Yes, I definitely, I don't want to live in a way where I have regrets. And I don't think, if I were on my deathbed right now, I really don't think that I would look at my life and have regrets. I'm just sort of like, it's always been my MO of like, just go do big, messy things, fail a bunch, embarrass yourself in front of whoever you need to embarrass yourself in front of. But at least at the end of the day, you're not going to be like, oh, I wish that I had spoken up. I wish that I would have said yes to this thing. You know, it never feels like that for me. So, yeah, I think what you're getting at too is like the best revenge is a life well lived.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's totally where my focus is. Like, I want to live well.
I think an interesting thing to the wanting to live well is this is going to dive a little bit into the mental health side. But I decided, so I've been through some dark times and I have a lot of mental health issues. And there was a part of my life that I didn't want to live anymore, you know? And so then one day I woke up, I think I was in residential. And I thought, okay, I don't want to live anymore. But if that's the case, and if I think nothing really matters, then what's stopping me from doing everything I've always been scared of doing? Like, if you don't want to live anymore, you have nothing to lose. So why not just do it? So once I shifted my mindset to that, I started, you know, applying to jobs I didn't think I would get, but I got them somehow, or going on adventures, leaving the country spontaneously, like doing things I used to be scared of just because, you know, you have nothing to lose. Why not? And then in doing that, I built my life into something that I really don't want to lose. And I love my life now. But it was built off the back of thinking, screw it. Got nothing to lose. You don't want to live. Why not try it all? So
absolutely. Yeah.
My mentality, it helped me a lot.
Very interesting. Yes, because you don't have anything to lose. Like the end is going to be the same for all of us.
Yep. None of us are getting out of here alive. That's exactly what I like to say. When someone's like, Grace, that's dangerous. I'm like, it's a race to the finish line. Come on.
Right. And so then I do always sort of have that in the back of my mind as well, because my mom ended up passing away when I was 25. But from the moment she got sick, it was like, careful, your mom's going to die soon. And so it was like, it was always something we were thinking about and kind of obsessing over and not really having good conversations about. But I think what that did is like thinking about how close that was every day was just like, okay, well, and I remember growing up and being like, I didn't choose to exist. Why did you guys do this to me?
Oh, yeah.
Like, why did you do this? I don't want to be here. Now, if I don't want to be here, I have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Could you have just gone back and not done something about it 12 years ago? Or like, you know, however old I was and just crying about something. And then you had asked me a few minutes ago of like, if there are things that had sort of changed in my life. And I think that my mom has going to college, moving out of my mom's house was very impactful for me because it allowed me to see myself outside of her way of seeing me. And that was really useful.
And did you feel like you were getting a way to see how other people lived life and how it could be different, like other families, other people your age functioned?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into it thinking that was going to happen, but I realized very shortly after I moved onto campus and started going to classes, they're like, wow, people think totally differently than me. They were raised totally differently than me. They have different belief systems about themselves than I do. And so that my whole freshman year of college was just me sort of trying to deal with that. And then I was smoking a lot during that time. And I actually credit cigarettes were sort of a therapeutic device for me in some ways, because I would go outside at night and chain smoke. And I would realize I had all of this bullshit in my head about who I am, that like I'm in this totally new environment. None of these people knew me.
You could be whoever
before
you want.
exactly, I could be whoever I want to be, but I have these thoughts in my head that are saying, no, you're like this and you're not good enough in this way. And nobody likes you because of this. And so I would go outside and chain smoke and sort of think to myself, like, okay, like, why do I think that? And just tracing it back in time. And I would be able often to trace something back to a memory of something that happened in grade school or middle school or something that doesn't seem like it would be a significant or impactful moment at all. But nonetheless, it just sort of set off this chain reaction of belief systems that I wasn't aware of when they were happening. And then they eventually add on to each other and create my idea of who I am.
Mm.
So that was very helpful for me my freshman year of college. But I mean, I think really, like, from me moving out of my house to me, 32 years old, that's a 14-year difference.
Yeah.
And I feel like that whole time has been me just trying to get to a place where I wake up in the morning, I'm cool. I'm cool with being alive. I'm cool with being who I am. I'm cool with what I have on my to-do list. And then I'm cool with the challenges. Like, I'm not trying to, like, set myself up to have this, like, naive, cushy life. I'm just trying to set myself up to be successful given how crazy life is, because life is really crazy. So
It is. I am a planner, and I have spreadsheets of like 10-year plans that I make. And then life throws a wrench in it every time. Like, there's been so many different plans.
of course.
It's like, of course, Grace, you thought that your color-coded Excel spreadsheet was really going to plan the rest of your life? Good one. That's funny.
Good job, Grace.
Like 4 years ago, I thought I'd be in Stanford right now, and that didn't happen, obviously. But life takes a different path. And
where are you right now?
so I did the first 2 years at community college. I actually did a bunch of college classes at night after my high school. So I'm now at Sonoma State getting my degree in accounting.
Yes, I do remember you saying you're going to be a CPA
I'd like to be a CPA, and then I'd like to go to law school. So we'll see what happens.
Cool. Yes, interesting.
Where did you go to college?
I went to UCSD in San Diego. So I'm from San Diego. I went to UCSD, and then right after that, I packed up and I moved to Chicago for 6 years. Having never been there before, I just got in my car and I really loved my life in San Diego at the time too. So I was just saying goodbye to a life that I loved.
What caused you to pack up and go to Chicago?
There was the surface reason that was the thing we were talking about out loud was the fact that I was a theater person and I needed a place to go just get my fingers into some honeypots. Okay. Chicago seemed like a good place to do that. And I had some friends over there. So on the surface, that's why we were saying that I was leaving. But I think underneath, I knew that I needed to get even more distance from my mom, even though this was during the last part of her life. She passed away while I was in Chicago. And I feel like I just needed to learn how to be a person on my own and go through something else that was hard, that I just don't think that college set me up for success. I had a ton of student loans and I had a degree in theater and I had no idea what to do.
Yeah, degree in theater and student loans, unless you get cast in Hamilton,
exactly.
I don't know what's gonna.
Right. So I was like, let me just go someplace else because I'm so wildly lost that something's going to have to happen over there.
Did something good happen in Chicago?
Yes. Well, I did. I met my better half, Ollie. Oh. So I got to meet him. That was lovely. And so earlier you were talking about yoga, which has also been a rock in my life since older than you. I discovered it like my last year in college. And I was going through a breakup with my college sweetheart at the time. And my first yoga class was like 60 minutes of me not thinking about what had just happened between him and I. And it was the first time in like a month. Like I wasn't sleeping. Like it's like that weird thing where you're like in bed at night, but you're like kind of always half awake, like churning through a bunch of stuff. And so I realized it was something special at the very first class. And then I realized like, oh, wow, like, you know, I'd been a couch potato my whole life. I hated exercise. I was a straight A student, except for gym. That was the only class that I let myself get a B in. It was like if kids were going on the monkey bars, I would get in the back of the line. I'd be a loner. I'd just like hope that the bell rang so that I didn't have to try to like go across 4 bars and then fall off and just like embarrass myself in front of everybody. So I was not into this movement thing. But in college, I gained a lot of weight. And by a lot, I mean like I was probably 40 pounds heavier than I am now. So it's not as if I've had a ton of experience with being huge or something. But I don't know if huge is even an okay thing to say. Oh my gosh. Sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry.
You didn't mean it like that at all. Just while people watching.
Right. Like, don't think that I'm making a judgment.
You're not body shaming or being fat phobic.
Right, exactly. It was just like for me being big, what I realized is I had that moment that you kind of had where you're like, am I just going to keep doing this? Is it because if I just keep doing this, obesity runs in my family. Like, you know, I'm not a stranger to that. I could just become obese. And then I had to have that moment with myself where I was like, I don't think I want that. I don't think I want it because I'm not comfortable in my mobility. I mean, certainly there is not maybe wanting to be seen as attractive by other people, although I would say that's not super important to me at this stage in my life, but certainly at other times, especially when I'm single, I think that there is a drive to want to be seen as attractive by other people. So there is a motivation on that end. But for me, the being bigger just was not a comfortable experience. I didn't feel good in my clothes. I didn't feel good moving my body around, just walking from the bus to the chair or something like that. So I had this moment where I was like, okay, well, you're going to have to figure out this eating thing. So that's one thing. And then you're also going to have to figure out this movement thing. And yoga ended up being that movement thing for me. And I got hooked, obsessed. That's what I've pretty much been spending the last 13 years doing with my life, is just really going down that rabbit hole. I was a full-time teacher for a while, and I wasn't able to figure out how to make that freelance gig type of lifestyle work in a sustainable way. And I realized I also didn't need, for my own fulfillment, I didn't need to be teaching 25 group classes a week. Actually, when you teach 25 group classes a week, it kind of
got the joy of you
totally
doing yoga in the first
like
place.
the worst. This is the worst.
Do you think that yoga helped you find peace with your body and your body image?
Yes and no. So I think when I started, it made me feel good, certainly. But shortly thereafter, I also got hooked on I can do cool things. I'm going to go learn how to do cool things. It did have kind of like this competitive sort of thing to it, because it's like, if you want to really go down that rabbit hole, you can get your feet behind your head and you're balancing on your pinky. Like, that is how deep you can go down that hole. And I was like, I want to go down that hole. And it kind of took the joy out of it for me. And I realized that this sort of like competitive, like wanting to be kind of like performative, show-offy type of thing, like that was just like a symptom of my personality that came out in many different aspects of my life. And it was just also manifesting itself in how I showed up to my yoga mat. But it did feel good besides that. It just stopped being fun at a certain point, and then I started injuring myself. So, and I had like kind of persistent pain in my hamstring attachment and like right on the inside of my right shoulder blade. That was like a persistent sharp pain that I had for probably 4 years. That would sometimes last like literally 24 hours a day for days and days and days. And I had like these reset tricks. And so I think it was a brain thing. So I had these reset tricks where like if I got a trigger point just right, I could reset it, and then I wouldn't feel it until something triggered it again. But then the moment it gets triggered again, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours of just sharp shooting pain on my right shoulder blade. And at the same time, I'm teaching yoga. So I feel fraudulent in that regard because I don't trust what I'm telling other people to do. So I backtracked a little bit and I pulled back from that world. And this is like the last 3 years, I've sort of had to like renegotiate what it is that I do when I practice yoga, what kind of experience I'm looking to have when I practice yoga. And what it has resulted in is like this, the way yoga education happens here is just like you learn yoga poses, you learn yoga philosophy, you learn yoga tradition, but you don't learn necessarily human movement. So I realized when I started getting myself injured that everything I knew about human movement existed underneath the umbrella of yoga. And I realized that that was backwards, and that I actually needed a much more sophisticated understanding of human movement. Underneath that is yoga, but also underneath that is swimming and weight training and running and biking, right? Like or dancing, all of these different expressions of human movement, but I want to understand this at the top. So I really put my focus in that. And for example, learning how many movements your shoulder can make and being able to decipher what movements my shoulder is making at any given time. Like if I put my brain into my shoulders right now, I can feel where all the bones are, and I can feel like, oh, this is a little rotated, and you like just getting myself into that level of detail has helped me. I have no aches and pains now. So that was like the main goal with this overhaul of my practice was like, I need to get out of aches and pains so that I can feel good about what I'm teaching to other people. And simultaneously, I think what came out of that is just like taking really good care of myself. Like if my body could talk to me and it could tell me what it wants me to do for it, am I supplying my body with that on a daily basis? And so on the movement side, the yoga side of it, I think that I figured that out. I think that I figured out what my body wants in order for everything to be working well, in order for me to have optimal movement options at any given moment. And I've learned so much also about the brain and how the brain controls movement, because that's where it all starts. And so when the body starts to feel better and more plugged in, the brain starts to feel a lot better, safer. That's what I learned too, is that like when you have a lot of movement options, your brain feels literally safer. And that impacts my moods. It impacts my emotions. It's impacted really everything. So that's how I approach it now. And I approach my practices like it being fun. I'm not interested in anything fancy at all. Nothing that I do is fancy. It's all very functional and fun. And I just want it to feel delicious. That's the goal, is to have it feel delicious.
I kind of have the same experience because I used to do rowing and I used to run and I used to lift weights and stuff. And some of that was during my eating disorder and some of that was, before. And I just got to where, I was lifting weights way too heavy, like back squatting 130 pounds at like 105 pounds of what I weighed. And that's how much I weighed. It was crazy. And I was just like, really in my head about it, and I would like be in pain all the time. But I'm like, yeah, I'm doing something right. And then, through recovery and my eating disorder and through needing to move, because there was after residential, there's a period of time where I wouldn't exercise because I was really worried that I would just fall down that rabbit hole again. And so my dance class, I actually do like pole fitness, and it is help. I know it's so, I would never have thought I would start doing this, but it's made me have so much peace with exercise in my body, because it's the only like exercise I've ever done that's made me feel like good about myself. Like, oh, I look good, because normally it's,
Interesting.
And also it's just so fun, and it doesn't feel like it's exercise. And so once I took that part out of it, it's not, yeah, it's a lot like yours, where you're not feeling the same pain from your injuries because you're overextending yourself, and it's just, as you say, delicious, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. So is it for you like the moment it starts to feel like exercise is the moment that it gets into this kind of control, addictive kind of space?
That, as well as a competition, like
Interesting, yeah.
I can't go back. I don't think, well, I mean, maybe one day, but I don't want to go back into like an intramural sport or something like that, because I am very, very competitive, and I will do whatever it takes to win. I will train super hard, and I know that my body just can't, it can handle it. It just doesn't need to handle it.
Mm.
Why punish my body for, well, sometimes exercise for me was used as like, you know, punishing myself for guilt I felt for things that I wasn't even responsible for, and that was something that also came in with my eating disorder. I had a lot of guilt about my parents' divorce, which I had absolutely nothing to do with, obviously, but so a lot of that came out in my eating disorder and my exercising and stuff like that, and it was like paying penance for something I didn't do, but in my head I was responsible. And an interesting thing about anorexia is it's considered like a lot of doctors call it like slow suicide, because you're dying every day. Like, there's just no way getting around it. You're not eating, you're literally dying slowly. So a little dark, but yeah. So now I just try to be present.
I'm struck by how deep, like how we think about our bodies and then how we treat our bodies, how deep that goes into, I mean, like the body just can't be separated as its own
From the
thing.
emotions.
Right. So like if you experience the guilt or the shame, that will manifest then in how you treat your body.
Yeah.
Like it'll manifest in how you brush your teeth. Like, do you brush your teeth in a way where you're like, thank you, teeth. You're the best teeth for me. And I love taking care of you. And let me make sure that I get all of the surfaces of all the teeth so that I do a really good job as the manager of these teeth. Or are you like doing this and you're like, like thinking about.
I'm like, oh, my coffee stains. Dang it, you need to cut back.
Right. Like I should have whiter teeth. Like I don't whiten my teeth either. And I do think that sometimes when I just like look at people, I'm like, dude, I'm blinded by your teeth right now. Like, should I be whitening my teeth? Like, what is the level? What is the difference? Like, I will pluck my chin hairs, which you probably don't have chin hairs yet.
I think your teeth are really white. I thought you whitened them.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I could not tell that you were half a pack day smoker at all. So.
I don't think that people who know me now they would probably be surprised by that. They'd be like, what?
I have an interesting question. So what do you think about, okay, so body image and society. So what do you think about how in society, if you think it's better now, but it feels like if you as a woman, feel happy with how you look or your body and you're confident, people think that you're full of yourself and shame you for that. What do you think about that?
That's interesting.
I'm not saying like everyone's like that. You should make new friends if people are like that, but I'm saying that I feel a lot of shame if I think, I look good. I'm like, Grace, that's conceited. No. I don't know if you feel that way.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for me, it has to do a lot with what I surround myself with. I try to not surround myself with too much of that messaging. Like if I were to see that messaging somewhere, like somebody saying something or something like that, it would strike me as bizarre because I've set up my relationships. Like I don't have any insecurities about Ollie's level of attraction for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel compelled to make myself seem attractive to other people. I haven't worn makeup in 3 years.
Wow.
I don't even really often, like now I do look in the mirror and I do like what I see.
Mm-hmm.
So if I didn't like what I saw, I don't know how I would feel about it. Would I feel like, crap, I need to go do something?
Mm.
Do I need to go change something? I also don't think that I'm like super attractive. Like I think that if like on a scale, like I would probably range between a 6 and an 8, depending on who you ask.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I've just made it like not that important, I guess.
That's a really healthy way of thinking.
Yeah, because for me, what's more important is my health.
Mm-hmm.
Like really my health. And if I like me being able to sit here and say that I don't have aches and pains is like the most amazing thing that I can think of. That like that's what I want. If I don't care if somebody else finds me attractive or not. Now I do care how people treat me, and I have been treated, you know, differently. I think, I don't know, but I have been treated differently. You know, if I'm at the bottom of the pool, let's say, in a group of people, or at the top of a pool of a group of people, and I've been both. Like I've been in groups of people where I'm at the bottom. I've been in groups of people where I'm more at the top, and I do see how people treat you differently, and not a huge fan of that, but I try to.
It's what I've been reading about, and it's called pretty privilege, and
Yes,
and I can totally, I don't think of myself as a very attractive person, but I can see in certain situations how, like, I never get in trouble if I do something, I don't know, like at a I've run through IKEA and jumped on all the beds and nobody says anything to me, or
totally.
laugh,
Yeah.
or something like, or I do stand-up comedy, and pre-COVID, I'm 19, and pre-COVID I would like sneak into the back of bars. I don't drink anymore, so I wasn't drinking, but I would sneak into the bars and do stand-up, and no one ever said anything to me. And so it's a really interesting concept of like pretty privilege of what things happen, and it's not okay. I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day. I mean, as we said, we're all gonna die. We all look the same with our skeleton. Like,
totally.
it's just interesting that society is conditioned to treat people better, that look better.
Right.
And another interesting thing about body image is, and this is kind of tying back to what I was talking about, anorexia isn't one size. I would notice how the people that were quote unquote larger and anorexic were treated next to me, where I was underweight, and they were technically okay on weight, but they, weren't eating, and they were very sick, but they didn't look sick. And so that's also another interesting thing about body image and how the world perceives you. Like, I'm recovered now, or I like to think of myself as recovered, but I'll go places and people will be like, wow, you're so thin. Do you even eat burgers? And I'll be like, this is a little bit awkward. Please don't talk to me about my weight, because, as someone that struggled with it. But I'll have people say things about my weight even now. And, it's really interesting to me to see how we just comment on people's bodies or how they look without second thought. I mean,
Do you
I
think that's
don't.
changing?
What?
Do you think that's changing?
I think that's changing. I really think that like Gen Z and the millennials are doing a much better job as the people before us because we're trying to be more size inclusive, I think. And we're not perfect at it, but I think that it's actually hard. You got half society of like this age of like influencers on Instagram and models and everything, and everyone things like Botox and highlights and couture and all that. But then you got the group of people that are like, hey, body positivity. So I think the sides are clashing, but I think we're having more of a thought that even if, let's say, you are someone that wants to look like an influencer or looks like one, I think people are getting better at saying, hey, it's not important for I want to do this. I think people are more comfortable in themselves on how they want to look or be perceived, and they're not projecting that on other people needing to be at that standard.
Yeah. And I don't know if that's a function of like, when I was growing up, you got messages mainly through your TV, and you had 60 channels you could choose from, but all of the messages came through that mechanism. And now that we're more on social media and we can have conversations with each other through there, and we can sort of choose what our influences are in some regard. I would hope that that would also be part of what's changing too.
Well, and I curate you said this before, it's like we curate our feeds. Like
Yeah.
for example, I don't follow fitness models or like the Kardashians and stuff because I know for me that'll make me feel bad about myself. But I know some people really like following people like that, and that's great for them. I just know for me that's not healthy.
100%. Yeah. It's like looking at your feed and being honest with yourself about what do I get out of this? Because for me, Instagram is an educational tool. I find my teachers really through Instagram. I learn on Instagram, and it's very important to me to have the things that I see there be like my experience of going into my feed is, oh, that's really cool. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. I'm going to go try that tomorrow. Oh,
Cool.
looks really cool. I wonder if I could do this. Like,
I have a lot of puppies on my feed.
yes. Then there's the puppy and it's like, oh, the cute puppy. And then it's like your friend's something or other. And you're like, oh, I'm glad to see Kelly's doing good, or, whatever it is. But for a lot of people, they don't curate their feeds like that. And so their experience might be more like, oh, why isn't my life like that? Why don't I look like that?
Well, I know my life looks nothing like actually, that's not true. I try to be pretty transparent on my Instagram, and I like to talk about mental health and addiction and anorexia. I try to do that. And then, it's peppered in with my normal, oh, hey, look, this is me in Paris. Right. Oh, so cool. But life isn't, you can't live life through a screen. Everyone is not the same.
Yeah.
I lived in Orange County for a little bit. I lived in San Clemente, and I went to a private school in Newport, which I had a scholarship for. But it was really interesting to see the lives of people that their parents were beautiful, they were gorgeous, and they had lots of money and everything that you think that people could ever want to be happy, and they were miserable.
Yep.
And it was just so interesting to see. I'm like, everything's going for you and you're still self-destructing. I wonder, so life really is not about how you look, how much money you have. It's cliche, but
well, it's cliche because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 100% it. And it's easy, I think, when you don't have the money or you don't feel beautiful and nobody in your life is making you feel beautiful. including yourself, because I think you can make yourself feel beautiful in the way that you treat yourself. It's easy to look at that and that sense of lack and to think, oh, that is what will fill this sense of lack. But it's not those things. And you realize that if you get a little bit of money, or if you get the beauty, or someone makes you feel beautiful all of a sudden, it was never really about that. It was about like a deeper sense of lack that could be figured out and discovered and worked on, whether or not you have the money, whether or not you have the beauty.
Yeah.
It's more convenient if you have those things. But you were talking about the pretty privilege too. And I do know what you're talking about. I see it out in the wild.
Yeah.
And also, I think that's part of why I don't wear makeup. I don't need to have pretty privilege. And I realize that I do have some, because there are things like you're saying, like you can jump on the beds at IKEA. There are things that I could do that Ollie could never do. And if I'm doing them with him, he's implicit in the things that I do. And he's like, dude, stop doing that, because like I will get in trouble.
And you're like, no, we won't. We never get in trouble.
Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. So I realized.
Like, what do you mean getting your oil change doesn't take 5 minutes and they give you a 25% off coupon?
Right.
My boyfriend was like, oh, you got your oil change. That was quick. I was like, yeah, it only takes me 10 minutes and they always give me a coupon. And he was like, what? They don't do that. And I was like, yes, they do. That's what happens when you get your oil change. And he's like, no, that's not normal.
That's cute girl privileges.
Yes. And I was like, oh. Well, I think I want to get to a point where I'm like you and I'm confident enough to not wear makeup, because makeup's kind of a hassle, and I think that'd be really interesting.
Person. Like I have some girlfriends who like, it's an art. It's like but for me, it was never like that. It was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then we're going to go out there and we want people to think we're hot. Okay. So you better think I'm hot when I do this.
I really appreciate people like you who are like, I don't wear makeup, but the girls that wear makeup are rocking it and they love it. And that's their thing. I really dislike when we go, you know what, I don't wear makeup and I'm better than everyone else because I'm not shallow and insecure. No, you're like, you go, girl. I can't do makeup like that, or I don't want to, but you look amazing.
Right. Well, I don't know where that's coming from in them. Maybe for them, it is an expression of their mental health or their.
Yeah. Well, I know for me, I'm not a huge makeup person, but I also know with my mental health being so poor that sometimes in order to feel good, it's not even about how that I look pretty with the makeup. It's just the process of sitting down with myself, making myself feel like a human being, like, wash my hair. Like, when your mental health is bad, all the little things like taking a shower and brushing your teeth and putting on clean clothes are really big deals that most people don't even think about. And so I know that that's really important for me when I'm in a really bad mental space. I try to do my makeup every day, not because I want to look good, but because I want to feel like a person. Kind of weird,
that's
but
very interesting. Yeah, and somewhat related, but I realized also that, like, I don't know if you have this, but there are some parts of my body that historically I have not been a fan of. I haven't liked my tummy. Like, that's always been my thing. Like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like my hair. Like, that's what I always said growing up. And then literally 6 months ago, I was like, do I really not like my hair? Or do I just not know how to take care of it? And because I don't know how to take care of it the right way, it registers to me as a hassle. And then I end up not liking it. And so I got myself in a rhythm of like, okay, I'm going to get a better shampoo. I'm going to get a better conditioner. I'm going to have rules about how I brush it, how I take care of it. I'm going to brush it more than once a day. Damn it.
I'll never get there.
Or even throw it up in a bun. Like, that was like my whole thing for my entire life, was just up in a bun. And my mom was always like, put your hair down. And I was like, no, you didn't teach me how to take care of it. You're just sick in your room, Mom. But then when I learned how to take care of it, I realized like, oh, wow, I actually really love my hair. Oh, wow, I really love my tummy. I just didn't know how to take care of these parts of my body. And so I thought that I didn't like them.
I think that's interesting. I think the last thing that I want to say, because I know we're getting close to time, about body image that helped me and hopefully will help someone that's watching this, is when I felt insecure about how my body looked, I tried to take a step back and I said thank you to each part of my body I did not like. Like, thank you to my thighs that help me get up the stairs and they walk me places. Thank you to my stomach that protects my organs. Thank you to all these things that I did not like, but I had to acknowledge that they were doing really important things for me, and that helped me immensely.
Interesting. I'm always curious about these, like where you kind of step back and you kind of talk yourself through a new perspective. Do you feel like that actually had a lasting impact beyond you telling yourself in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, if I told myself, I tell myself those when my body image was really bad, I would tell myself those things almost every day. And now they're kind of just ingrained in me. And if I catch myself slipping and being like, oh, I hate this part of my body, I'm like, no, you see that? That's Felicia. Felicia, the tummy really keeps you protected. She's doing a great job. Don't talk about Felicia like that.
Interesting.
So it's something that it's like a habit I formed with myself.
It almost sounds like you doing that is like you're creating these new thought options every day and you're reminding yourself, I have different options for how I think about all of this stuff.
Yeah, I can either go down the I'm unhappy with myself and how I look and this is ugly, or I can go down the wow, I am so grateful that it is doing this function for me. That's so great. I get to breathe. I get to walk on my own 2 feet. I have my health for the most part. It's amazing.
Yes. Amen, sister.
Woo!
I'm excited for you in your 20s because I think that you've learned a lot already, and your 20s can be difficult because I feel like that's a decade where, at least for me, I felt a lot of pressure to be hot or to just, I don't know, like be part of the crowd, right? Yeah. Like competitive, to have a competitive edge attractiveness wise. So I think you kind of going through all these challenges up until this point will maybe set you up to handle that pressure in a different way than your peers, maybe.
I think so. I've gone through a lot of really hard things in life, and I had to grow up a lot quicker than most people, and I've gone through some hard stuff later on. And so I think that that's really set me up to not stress out about like the little things, like, oh my God, what am I going to wear to that? Like, I didn't get invited to that frat party. My life is over. Stuff like that. Like the dumb things that we think at the time are important. I've been able to been blessed with the perspective of, hey, actually, it's not that important. And here's why. Like, there's a bigger picture. So I'm excited for my 20s too. It'll be interesting. My birthday's in April, so I'll start on that road.
Oh my goodness, a new decade.
I know, how exciting.
Super exciting.